Hi, welcome. Good afternoon. So thank you for coming. My name is Cynthia. I co-chair the Entrepreneur and SME Committee, and we're very honored to have Professor Kees Turbon here with us today. He's the Dean of the School of Design and Swire Chair Professor of Design at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So he's going to talk us through design thinking process and methodologies, and how we can use these to nurture business innovation. And the big guy beside him needs no introduction, Mr. Anson Bailey. He's a partner in business development at KPMG. He also leads our TMT sector and consumer market sector. So we always kind of think, well, Anson, what are you doing on the weekends? He's like, I'm going to school. So this is a good opportunity to see what he's actually doing. He will talk us through, he will share with us some projects that he's been working on, applying these methodologies. Okay, so without further ado, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. It's lovely to see a class of students. You're back in school. I hope you behave well. If there's any questions, just let me know. Feel free. My first name is Kees. This name you only have in one country, that's the Netherlands. I'm from Dutch origin. At some point, New York used to be New Amsterdam, and the Dutch people living there, the names would either be Jan or Kees. And when they would group them, they would say Jan Kees, Yankees. That became the Yankees. So that's the origin. So Kees is the second half of the Yankees. Since we are here at the American Chamber, I think it's, worthwhile informing you about it. I'm in this building. In fact, I often show people, and my office is here, in the top. Do you know who is the architect of this building? No, Foster did a lot in Hong Kong, but not this one. It's also a different style. It's a lady architect. She won the, she just passed away. Her name is Zaha Hadid. Actually, today we will welcome a jury of, let's say, international architects. They selected 30 projects of the last few years that were the most exciting building projects, and we are among the top 30. And maybe after this interview we have a chance to even move up and become like top 5. So this is really a special building. More important even than the building, that's hardware. More important is the software, is the people in the building. We have 1,400 students, and I often challenge people in Hong Kong who are in other buildings. I say, do you know of one building in Hong Kong with 1,400 creative people? And that keeps them thinking. They cannot immediately, well, oh, that's my office. We have all these creative people in my office. It's not that they immediately say that most of the time. So there's some work to be done. I take pride in having a school in Hong Kong because it's a special place, and when I give talks also internationally, this is one of the slides I show, and I also admit that, of course, there's all these rankings and lists and studies done, and of course we only take the positive things, so that's what you see here, the things where we do not score so high we keep out, but there's enough rankings where we do really well, and those are things related to design. Hong Kong is also a very good city for students. Very competitive, ease of doing business, even the quality of life, and some people have different views on that. we came out relatively high. I also, in getting to know you as an audience a little bit better, I always ask a question. I came to a location in China and I wanted to have lunch, and I had to decide, do I go to the left to KFC, or do I go to the right to BFC? And my question to you is, if you would have, the same choice, who would go to KFC? Yeah? Oh, well, those are the two options. Who would go to BFC? Okay, okay. So there's at least 5 or 6 people who dare to take the risk. Huh? I think that's good. So that's shows that some people are a little bit more adventurous than other people. But yeah, sometimes you take risks, sometimes you don't. Of course, but the reason for showing this is, of course, being in Hong Kong and China, innovation is a big thing, and it's also kind of interpreted in many different ways. In many places of the world, and particularly if you take China as an example, if you go to a design school, you have to learn the technique, and you have to actually copy the master, because that helps you to develop the technique. And only when you have developed those skills, then you are allowed to be more creative. But even then, you have to stay within the boundaries that are within a certain tradition, because you have to respect that type of tradition. If you go to an art school or a design school in Europe or in the US, they want you to do something very different. They want you to not do something that is similar to what people have seen before. They want to see completely new things. And if you do not really, let's say, pay respect to those who were in the past, also fine, as long as you are showing things that are new, creative, and nobody has seen before, and you develop your own personal style. So there are huge differences in what is kind of appreciated in different parts of the world. I've got 8 PhD students, most of them are from China, and I asked the first one, please can you help me to define what is innovation? Because we talk about it so much, and please illustrate with some examples. And she said, okay, let's take a real innovation. At some point, when Dyson came out with this product, that was a real innovation, because it was not seen before, completely new technology. Maybe the functionality, of course, was already known, but the way it was delivered was completely new. Then you go to China and you find this product. Well, she says, this is an imitation. And so this is so close to the original one, doesn't really add anything. But here we have something that is a bit different. Now we have the same functionality, but not for, let's say, the living room, but for the children's room. So you make it smaller, you make the design a little bit different. And here the word micro comes in. It's not a big innovation, but it's a small step. It's a small step differentiating from what was existing before. And of course, on top of that, you can also do many incremental innovations. You can make standards and stuff, which help to make the product more exciting, or to make it more versatile in different environments. With all honesty, yes, I so much appreciate this one, but everything that comes here, I think I'm not really excited about, to be honest. I think we should do better, and we can be more innovative than doing these kinds of things. When I came to Hong Kong 4.5 years ago, yes, I wanted to lead the design school, but the big challenge is to change design education in the school, but to do that for the entire of China, as being one of the top schools in the region. And actually, we are the #1 in Asia. So that gives us a responsibility to also change design education, the curriculum in China. And there are, as we speak, at that time we estimated 1.5 million students of design, and we now know there are close to 2 million students of design. If they do a better job in product design, in communication design, in interior design, in all design fields, then that will have a huge impact on the nation and on the innovativeness of China, to the benefit of Chinese people, but also of many other customers of design products. Now coming back to Hong Kong, there's a colleague with whom we work closely, and is also a program leader of the Executive Master of Innovation Leadership. His name is Yeshua Sivan. He's from Israel originally, and he wrote a nice piece in the South China Morning Post. And this was about, it had a title, Let's Design Hong Kong 3.0. Those who know about the history of Hong Kong, which is not a very long history, but there has been kind of elements of trade, initially manufacturing, the financial sector came up, manufacturing has gone out, we still do financial services, and there's a lot of money going into real estate activities that is not going into stimulating innovation, because that's maybe somewhat more, let's say, it's a longer cash conversion cycle. Putting money into technology innovation may take longer before you get your money back than if you would do it otherwise, and then there's more risk potentially. So there's a lot to be developed and designed for a more innovative Hong Kong 3.0, but there are good possibilities. Not only being so close to Shenzhen, but also we really have good universities here, we have talented people, we have a good infrastructure, so there's lots of opportunities that we can grasp as Hong Kong, and we have to take those opportunities. As I said, we are the highest ranked design school. We also have been in Business Week several times, which is all nice. And I must say I'm really appreciative of the support that we also get from not just the Polytechnic University, but Hong Kong in general, to come out with a design school like this. I think this is really exceptional, and you would not see so easily in other places. I also want to talk to you about value. If you innovate, you have to come up with something that people appreciate, that has a certain value. It's not just that you come up with an invention. You can invent a million things, but only those things that are appreciated by people, that are valued, are worthwhile for people to spend money on, and that's what really becomes an innovation. And these three people, they looked at something that had no value at all, that had negative value, and they turned it into positive value. In fact, they took a can of Coke, and there are some of them on the table, and they used the body part of that can of Coke, the bottom part, as the body of the watch. And they designed that in such a way that it came out as a fashionable, almost like a fashion statement. And they submitted that to the Red Dot, let's say, award committee, and it came out. They did not just get the Red Dot Design Award, no, they were the best of the best in the category. And in fact, if you see what they're doing, they take something, a can of Coke can have a certain value, maybe, 7 Hong Kong dollars, 8 Hong Kong dollars. But when you empty it, it has negative value because we don't know how to deal with it. And they turn negative value into positive value in something that is really appreciated. They started a company and they're doing really well. There's a lot of value also in the silver market. And this is a catwalk that we have with elderly citizens. Normally, if you look at catwalks, there's all these very thin ladies, too thin most of the time, wearing, young ladies wearing fashionable clothes. And we felt, if you look at market possibilities and opportunities, we should not only, let's say, focus on young people. There's a huge silver market, but then you have to also understand better the needs of people who are already a bit older. So we teamed up the fashion designers with elderly models, and those are actually not professional models or whatever. No, they are just normal elderly people. But what we also saw is that when they were dressed up like that and they were on the catwalk, we had people in the 80s, mid-80s. Normally they would maybe be a little bit shy, but when they were dressed like that, they were walking, hey, do you see me? Hey, this is me, hey. Yeah? So this is kind of it's not just money, there's also value to the community, value to society, value that you can give in terms of self-esteem and respect to people. And those are also, let's say, opportunities for innovation. And having a catwalk with elderly people itself is a kind of innovation. Most of you will be on LinkedIn. There's a possibility for other people to acknowledge your expertise in certain areas. That's what people have done with me as well. So instead of yourself saying, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, you can see what other people know you for. So what kind of skills do you have? And the one that came out most strongly for me is design thinking. And in all honesty, I'm not quite sure if I'm so happy with that, but okay, that's a fact of life. So that also makes me now explaining a little bit more about what is design thinking. And this has been around for, let's say, you could say in the design field already maybe for 20 or 25 years, but it has been picked up by the business community maybe 8, 9 years ago. And there was this one company called IDEO, and this is also borrowed from IDEO, a company in the US, starting from product design, but then they found out that the methods that they use to design products, they can also use the same methods for a much wider set of problems, societal problems, all kinds of things that could be defined as, let's say, human-based problems. They felt they could use design methods to solve those, and that got traction to the extent that many papers were written in the Harvard Business Review. All top business schools are now teaching, and also other design schools are now teaching about design thinking. One reason for doing that is that if you just teach the normal business courses, there's nothing so much about innovation. It doesn't help to innovate. And of course, if you study business well, it takes innovation to have sustained economic growth as a company. So they also want to understand innovation better. And design thinking is a way to get to innovate, to be more innovative. It's actually about a combination of 3 things. It's about people, business, and technology. I already told you, if you come up with invention, something that is new to the world, but nobody likes it, it's not a real innovation. So somebody needs to be willing to pay money for it. But then also it should be feasible. It should be working well to the extent that people enjoy using it because the technology is sound. If the technology is not stable or things are not working out well, it's not a real sustainable innovation. So all these 3 things need to be put in place in the right balance. And coming from the design field, most of all, the starting point is with people. You do not start with technology, as some companies do. You start at the people side. So what is it that people really are interested in? What is it that people enjoy doing? What is it that people sometimes hate doing, and you can turn around in things that are that they do not, let's say, find themselves in such situations as they were before. So understanding people about their wishes, their needs, their dreams, and all these kinds of things, that's the first starting point. And then you see, okay, what is it that you can do, and does this bring money? And of course, the sweet spot is where you address all these 3 aspects in the right balance. Some people, they look in particular on other cross-sections of technology and people, cross-section of business and people, cross-section of technology and business. That's also where you can innovate. And there are also opportunities. But if you really want to do something big that will have a huge impact also on the lives of people, then the best thing is then actually to start from understanding people and then looking at ways to address those needs. There's a guy in Italy, his name is Roberto Verganti. he also analyzed many successful companies, and he said, if you come up with new things, you can do things that are incremental improvements, and this is actually in the examples that I gave about innovation, most of them were like incremental, small steps. Of course, you can also do radical improvement. If it's a radical, if you want to do something radically new, most of the time you will need technology. And often, many of the innovations that we see to the world are coming through new technologies. And technology companies, you could say, at a certain point are also a little bit technology push. Since they are leaders in certain technology fields, they try to, as much as possible, leverage those technologies. So that's their way of thinking. So they think from the technology to possibilities in the outside world. There's also the market pool. If you ask people what they want, they can give you some ideas, but those ideas will always be very close to where we are today. I was in Philips more than 10 years, also with the household appliances, for instance, working on vacuum cleaners. And if you ask people, you know, what kind of vacuum cleaner do you want, or what kind of improvements do you want on the vacuum cleaner? Well, they have sometimes very nice, small, practical things that could be useful, and you can make, you know, you can make the handle a little bit different, and you can change the color, and you can make it a little bit lighter, and you know, you can do many small things that people are already happy with. But those are, let's say, very user-centered, incremental innovations, and those are very important to companies actually. So, like 80 to 90% of all innovations are in this box. And I also learned through business practice that there's a golden rule: small changes have bigger impact. If you really find, you know, these one or two changes that people really appreciate in relation to existing products and services, if you really find those and you communicate well about those, you can have a huge impact. If you make a big step, then you have certain complications in the sense that people, they get a bit scared. This is, you know, does it really work well? There's all kinds of risk coming in. So people often play it safe. Yes, they want to have something that is a bit different, and if it's different on those aspects that they find relevant, yeah, then you can have a big impact. But we do not want to always have the same world as we have today. We want to create things that are new and different. So Verganti said there's also the design-driven innovation, and that's very similar to the design thinking, where again you start with people. You do not ask people what they want, but you study what is it that they are doing, how do they spend their time, what kind of changes do we see in behavior. And you use your kind of also creativity to propose things that are new. So instead of asking directly and then getting things that are very close to what we have now, you see what are needs and you propose things that are different by using your creative insights. And that's the design-driven innovation. And the outcomes are also can be new meanings. So you can give a new meaning to what existed already before. And I will give you a few examples of that. One is a product that was done by LG. And I want to ask you, do you think this is a meaningful innovation? It's a curved, you know, it's a mobile phone or cell phone that is curved. And in fact, if you would, some people have a really nice, let's say, bottom. So if you put it, you know, it follows exactly the curve of let's say, not everybody's, but you know. Well, so the question is this a meaningful innovation?
No.
No? Is there anybody who thinks this is meaningful? You think it's meaningful? Yes, good. Why? So I made a phone call to Kumpio Lee, who was the person leading the design team at LG. I said, Kumpio, why are you doing this? I don't understand. You make so many good products, and please, we are friends. Explain to me, because I can't see this. How is this helping your company and you as a design director when you come with this? Don't do it. And he explained, in very similar ways. This is difficult to make. Their intention is not to sell a lot of those phones, but they want to show that they master a certain technology that, in particular for like widescreen TV and the like, this could be very much appreciated. So the intention is not to sell these kinds of cell phones, but they support the brand and communicate that they have a technology skill, that they are innovative, and that further builds the brand value of LG. So then, of course, I said, thank you, Kunpyo, now I understand better. Already a little bit more than a year ago, I was reading the South China Morning Post, and I saw a picture of a man who I know quite well. And he was on the ground, not in good shape, so I was a bit in a shock. Hey, what's happening to my old colleague? Because this is a guy who works in the design school in the Netherlands that I was a dean of before I came here. I said, why is he on the ground? And then, this girl, what are they doing? And then I see this. And also, why should this be in the South China Morning Post? There's something happening in the design school in Delft, the Netherlands. Why must this be in there's so many things happening. So why is this in the South China Morning Post? This is because there was a kind of innovation. We all know about drones, in particular because of DJI, which came from Hong Kong, now in Shenzhen. They are used a lot, these drones, not just for taking pictures. The US military and others use it for killing people. That's also a function that is somehow appreciated. Here they use it not to kill people, but to save lives. So there's a defibrillator. So when your heart comes to a standstill, which is a nasty situation, and requires help fast, so then instead of waiting for an ambulance, who is in the congestion and then takes ages to get to the patient, and then the patient already died, the idea is to have a drone flying to the patient, landing, and then someone around does the job and helps the patient to survive. Is this a meaningful innovation? Yes? I expect maybe the other person who said no last time, yes last time, to say no this time. Do you think this is meaningful? Okay. Yeah. This was a final year student project, and the student got an A+. Couldn't be better. Then after his graduation, he tried to start a company based on this, because it's nice to have an idea, but just an idea is not good enough. You want to have something implemented that people can really, take benefit, have the benefits in real life. What do you think? Is he in business now? No? Who thinks he's in business? So interesting, huh? You all say this is a meaningful innovation, and you don't think he's in business. That's a bit of a contradiction. This is also on YouTube, and there were like 5 million people watching this. So there's real interest. It doesn't happen normally, when you have a student graduation project that 5 million people see your project. This is really very exceptional. Why is this? I have to agree. It's not, it's not out there. There are a few problems. Actually, 2 very critical ones. You cannot just fly with drones everywhere. That's the first one, in particular closer to airports and the like. And the second is, if this one gets on the ground, and yes, there could be a person, but if this person does not apply the technology well, she could even do a lot of damage to the patient. So, good idea. You know what I think what will happen? I think at some point there will be a different version of this idea that will come about. Because there are some good elements. The fact that this drone can go fast. So there will be, you know, I'm confident that somehow elements of this idea will be implemented. But we're not sure where and in what kind of shape, or but there's good stuff to this, let's say, basic underlying elements to this concept. Back to theory. We always say the product, you know, the product is in the heart. We design products, and product can also be a service, can be an interior, can be a building, can be many different things. Actually, everything you touch has been designed. We don't always kind of are fully aware of that. Even if you go to certain parks, even the trees and the bushes are being designed now. So we have kind of, everything is being designed for users. And those users, we have different types of users with different goals, and they live in different environments. They have a different context from which they live and operate. And what we are designing actually, so the product should meet the needs of these users. But more importantly, actually, it's about the interaction. How can we help people to interact with new products and services? There's some kind of functionality out there, and how do we make it possible for people to take advantage of that? There's a new technology, there's a new way of doing certain things. So how do you make that possible? How do you give access for people, to people, so that they can benefit and enjoy from that? So it's not just the product, it's also the way people interact, and more we interact via the internet, from a distance, and that will become more and more dominant also in the future. So those are things that we need to design, not just the product, but in particular also the way people interact with it. This is a very basic picture, but it also is very general. It doesn't matter if you are in product design or communication design or interior or architecture, even software design. All these kinds of innovations are about, if they are about people, it's about making it possible for people to interact with the environment. And what we also have learned is that people do not always want to interact with products and physical things. They want to interact with other people, or they want to interact with other organizations. And that's also something that you can innovate on, to make it more easy for people to interact with other people. And that's often also a very important source of inspiration for innovations to come about. I have to be mindful of time a little bit. How much time do I still have? I'm already overrunning. Okay. Well, okay. This one thing, maybe this then the final slide that I want to show you. If you're innovating, you actually make a step towards the future. And we have the world as it is now, and then there's the new world. And if you look at, suppose you are, I spoke about vacuum cleaning and vacuum cleaners. If we understand what is the world like today. So we know what are the products, we know how people interact with them, and we also know, let's say, what is the context, what is the environment in which people operate those products and systems. Now, if you want to go to the future, we do not just say, okay, this is the old vacuum cleaner and we make the new vacuum cleaner. Now, what we do, in fact, is we look at the old product, we see how people interact with the product, we look at the environment in which people are doing that, and then we look at what will be the new environment. What are the new, let's say, conditions in which people live and work? Environments need to be cleaned. What are new ways that people want to interact with those environments and with maybe new cleaning methods? And then the outcome is a new product. So instead of going direct from old product to new product, we go back to the underlying elements of the interaction and of the environment. And even though we cannot always say what the future will be like, we do know certain things about the environments that are changing. We know that our new technologies are coming. We see changes in how people live and work and how they, let's say, deal with each other. So the future context is different. And that also leads to different types of interactions and then to different types of products. So this is a very important visualization of a way of working. If you want to innovate, those are steps that you have to go through. It's not just you have you have the old product on the table and then you have a creative session and then there's a nice outcome. No, you have to do a lot of analysis work on the interaction, on the context, and see how this is changing, and then come up with outcomes that are appropriate for the new context and the new environment. Unfortunately, I have to leave it here. This is only lesson 1 out of lesson 245 lessons. I hope to have a chance to, at any point in time, to tell you more about innovation. But I'm grateful for your attention, and I give the mic to my student, colleague, and friend Anson. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kees. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to say that I have been in Kees's classes on numerous occasions. It never gets boring because there's really a lot of things to learn around that whole area of design thinking. I'm just going to take you through a few of my slides. What I thought I'd do today is share with you some of the things that I've been learning in this course. As a background, I'm a partner at KPMG. I take care of business development. I go across different areas of the business. I look at different sectors. But quite frankly, probably about 2 years ago, we started to see a lot of activity around this new area of high growth markets. We started to see new disruptions. We started to see new entrepreneurs coming into the marketplace, disrupting traditional business. And I started to see that more and more. And I also questioned myself. I did ask myself, do I have the right tools to think about how I can be effective in the future? How do I deal with all of these new types of businesses? How do I deal with these new generation of millennials? How do I deal with these new entrepreneurs? And as we see a shifting from the old economy to the new economy, and a shifting to this new shared economy. So my journey here in China started over 25 years ago. Just a bit of a background. This is me as a young student in Shanghai. You notice a couple of observations. I did have hair. I had a mustache because 25 years ago, that was cool. Okay, so mustaches were cool 25 years ago. Andrew Jones knows exactly what I'm talking about because he had a mustache just like me 25 years ago. He shaved it off last week. But right now, one of the things that we are faced with are lots of disruption. We're faced with this new level of innovation. And, you know, some of the things that we discuss in class during this Executive Masters in Innovation Leadership are all the things that we're discussing in my office, all the things that are being discussed out there in the marketplace. So for me, it's actually been really useful to sit down and just take a step back and think about, what are we going to do? I mean, really, what are we going to do in the future? A little bit scary. So what is innovation? You know what? I couldn't help myself. I could not help myself because I'm a Brit, obviously. I'm English. Got to tell you, we have just made a massive mistake on Brexit. So obviously, what is innovation? I just had to share that picture. So to all my American cousins, don't make the same mistake. So just very briefly, so what I wanted to do right now, and just over the next 20 minutes, is take you through some of the things that I've been learning and how perhaps we can all apply them in our businesses on a day-to-day basis. This was a project I did with Professor Kees de Bont. This is my design thinking assignment back in December. And as Kees mentioned, one of the things that I think has been really useful for me is that I work in an accounting firm, a consulting firm. We don't design things, do we? But, of course, we offer a very wide range of services. And one of my biggest challenges that I face in my role, of course, is to seek new ways to collaborate and serve this new generation of customers at KPMG. Because the customers today absolutely want different things from the customers of yesterday. And so, again, it's the mindset, it's the increasing challenges of managing our firm in this new dynamic economy. One of the things that we're seeing is speed of change. Things are changing so damn rapidly, we need to keep up with that change. We need to do a better job of researching our customer needs, reshaping our ideas. So, again, how do we drive customer discovery and customer insights? Because today, my clients don't just want me to cookie cut a product. They want me to share insights. They want me to go on this customer journey. So again, I have been, I'd say, really positively impacted by this whole idea of design thinking and doing a lot of research, as Professor Kees de Bont mentioned, on IDEO, and of course people like Tim Brown being the chairman of IDEO, probably one of the fathers of design thinking, and spending a lot of time on looking at the different processes. So if we have to agree on a brief and straightforward definition of what design thinking methodology is, all the various experts would probably describe it as a good tool to help a creative solution for a problem. You can see here, this is part of my presentation, but this is not so straightforward when you're dealing with a professional services environment and a large group of accountants. So again, one of the things that we need to do is we need to get out of our comfort zone. We really need to get out of that comfort zone. And I think the whole idea of design thinking has really helped me to get more creative. And as I said, again, being creative perhaps is not, in the minds of an accountant, a very good thing to be. So I have always faced lots of comments saying, most frequent comment is, I'm not creative. Don't ask me to be creative. So again, one of the things that I've done is I've really enjoyed doing a lot of the research, the D School at the University of Stanford. There's a lot of great material that shares with us how we can perhaps do things differently. And I think one of the key points for me is how we can do things differently. And again, this is just to give you some idea. We have a matrix organization at KPMG. We have our service lines. We have our vertical industry lines. But one of the things that we've been doing more recently is, again, changing our own corporate culture. And you can see here, finding new ways to collaborate. And I think that's been really important for us because as a traditional accounting firm, we absolutely have to change as well. We have to change. And so future scenario for our own people is we need to have a more entrepreneurial mindset, creating greater self-confidence, introducing things like design thinking into our corporate culture. And what it means for the community, we're looking at an enhanced startup ecosystem. We're now seeing Hong Kong as an innovation hub, right? People are actually talking about Hong Kong as an innovation hub. And of course, a new generation of thinkers with those new ideas. And I think, you know, I'm an old guy now, but I do worry about the next generation. And I think people like Cynthia, I worry about you, Cynthia. Thank you. But, you know, we're going to have to change. And it's really about that future generation. It's Cynthia's generation that also we're going to have to change for. So again, collaboration, opportunities to collaborate. Look at all of these new sectors. You know, again, one of the great things that we've been doing in class in our executive masters in innovation leadership, we've been discussing about all of these areas. What does that mean for business? What does it mean for us? Healthcare tech, big data, fintech, IoT, mobile, edtech, e-commerce, smart cities, wearables. You know, we were not having these conversations 3 or 4 years ago. We're absolutely having those conversations now. So again, applying the design thinking model, empathy, I think that's really important, but defining ideation, prototyping, and testing. I think, quite frankly, one of the things that we're seeing, and I'm seeing with my clients, is this whole area of IoT, Internet of Things, and the potential that Hong Kong has to be the hub for commercialization, for IP, for ideation, for all of those creative ideas. And when we look at what we have in South China, and for me, that's really interesting as well, because, you know, a couple of years ago, South China was finished. In the eyes of a lot of people, they're saying, that's it, forget South China, forget the manufacturing in the south of China. But as Case pointed out today, look at some of the companies that we're now seeing. DJI, the drone company, right? We're seeing some really cool technologies in wearables. We're seeing some really cool technologies in other areas as well. One of the great things I have to say that on this course, we've had a number of these entrepreneurs come in and present their business plans to us. And for me, that's been quite a remarkable journey to listen to these really top-notch entrepreneurs come in and tell us what they plan to do in the future. I'm not going to spend any time on this. I'm happy to share the slides with you. But again, prototyping, this is quite interesting because we want our people to work with prototypes during the creative process, but the challenge is to get our people to always capture something physical, even if it's a concept. Our head of innovation, a guy called Edge Zarella, and of course Cynthia knows him as well. He's recently banished the use of PowerPoint presentations in our new Insight Center at KPMG due to the fact that they inhibit participation and encourage a passive attitude. He goes berserk if he sees anybody trying to put on a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm not going to spend any time there, but again, design thinking can help us to reframe our business challenges. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of the other people to solve the problems and ensure we stay relevant. And I think that's very important for the traditional businesses as well. So people like KPMG, we have to ensure we stay relevant, because if we don't, we become dinosaurs. Now, something else, just very quickly, a couple of other courses. One of my classmates is a guy called O.M. Chan. O.M. is the CFO of Lane Crawford Joyce Group. And I actually visited O.M. last week over in Wong Chuk Hang to visit a new creative space, innovation space that Lane Crawford are also about to launch. This was looking at the retail industry, and the project that I was working on with with OM was all around the retail industry and innovation. What are we seeing? So again, I'm not going to spend any time on this because we don't have time, but I just wanted to mention that we were looking at all the disruptive factors. Actually, if you look at some of the traditional businesses like retail are so up for change. They're really going to see a lot of disruption. And I think one of the things that we saw were things like e-commerce, 24/7. How can the traditional retailers really compete with the online retailers? And this was, you know, really what we were looking at, all of these disruptive forces, and again, making use of the innovation competitive landscape for analysis. We were looking at all of these, you know, Kim's Blue Ocean, Christensen's disruptive innovation, Hammer's re-engineering. Again, looking at all of these different concepts. And then really looking at what strategies are we going to deploy in the future. And then we had to present back all of these different strategies. In fact, obviously for us, we then came up with an O2O solution, right? Online to offline solution. So again, redefining the supply chain, but also recognizing that we were living, and we are living, in this mobile-first economy. There are now 5 billion, I repeat, 5 billion mobile phones in circulation on this planet right now. And it feels that a lot of them are here in Hong Kong and the rest of China because the numbers of phones that we have. So again, the transformation, the leapfrogging, and of course, some of these new market trends, showrooming versus web rooming. Right, who's done the showrooming? You know what showrooming is? Going into the store, taking a picture. Cynthia, you've done it, right? Yeah. Gone in, click, take that picture, go home, you go online, and you order the product. How about web rooming? Any views on web rooming? What's web rooming? Pretty much the reverse. I spend hours and hours doing my homework online, just making sure I've got the right size, the right color, the right fabric, but I then go to the store and I actually buy the product. So obviously our conclusions were that, you know, retail was not entirely doomed. Traditional retailing wasn't entirely doomed, but we needed to have that O2O type of strategy. Something else which, of course, we were thinking about was, again, you can see here, the age of disruption. We were talking about how everything is going to be connected to everything else. And I think the interesting thing that we were researching was, again, this whole connectivity, connected devices. And you can see here, by the year 2020, 50 billion connected devices. That's a huge number. So, you know, one of the interesting things, that number actually came from a guy by the name of John Chambers, the executive chairman of Cisco Systems. And at the end of last year, he stood in front, just like I'm doing now, he stood in front of the CEO, the Fortune CEO conference, the Fortune 500 conference in San Francisco. And he looked around, he said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you about connected devices, 50 billion by 2020. But more importantly, I want to tell you that 40% of you are not going to exist in a meaningful way in the next 5 years. Actually, he said 5 to 10 years. So imagine CEOs of Fortune 500 companies listening to John Chambers. So what does that tell us? It tells us that things are changing. It tells us that we, as corporates, and people within those corporates are going to have to innovate. We're going to have to change. We're seeing a lot of these accelerators. We're seeing innovation. We've also been talking to some interesting accelerators here in Hong Kong, here in town. AIA, even an insurance company, today they are also innovating. The interesting thing is Steve Monahan, the head of innovation at AIA, talks about how innovation is going to happen and originate here in Asia. So lots of opportunities. We're also seeing all these different accelerator programs, and we're talking to a number of these execs. And we're seeing lots of new business models emerge. This is the Mills Project. This is a regeneration of one of the old mills in Chinwan, owned by Nanfeng Group. And we were, again, looking at this as one of our projects. And OM and I had been talking to the Mills team. And the interesting thing here is that these guys are spending about $800 million to revitalize this old mill, owned by the Nanfeng Group. An old textile mill that now they're turning it into the latest retail experience. But more importantly, within the Mills project, they're going to be nurturing the next generation of fashion entrepreneurs and fashion-related entrepreneurs. Over 100 different fashion entrepreneurs are going to be based over here at the Mills project. So exciting things. And as I mentioned, the thing that we're also seeing is that companies are changing. As I mentioned, I went to visit the Lane Crawford Joyce Group over in Won Chuk Hang at One Island South. And they're also now talking about how they can nurture and develop the next generation of entrepreneurs. So this was our conclusion in our project. We're going to see a rapidly changing landscape in retail and its relationship with technology being the key driver. And we, of course, were looking at AI and robotics. And the other interesting thing that we looked at were things like trend intelligence. You can see there, we shall have much deeper insights into the future consumer and trends before they become obvious. We're going to see a new era of machine learning. And that was our conclusion. The speed of change is accelerating. So that was one of the projects. And I think traditional business is changing. This is, just very briefly, this is the KPMG Insight Center. We now employ data scientists at KPMG. And if you'd have asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would have said, you guys are crazy. Of course, we're an accounting firm, we're a consulting firm, but you have to change. And it really is around innovation. The other interesting thing that we are doing, this is, we also did a course on mindfulness. Mindfulness. Who knows mindfulness? A few people, right? Mindfulness. I have to say, I was not really convinced about mindfulness. I wasn't really convinced, but by doing the course, you know, one thing that it really helped me to do was to step back and really unclutter. I use the word unclutter my mind. And I never thought I would be, and I'm over here, never thought I would be on top of Lantau Peak practicing my breathing exercises. But I did. And we had a couple of great professors that worked with us. But one thing that I learned was that mindfulness is absolutely something that a lot of entrepreneurs and leading businessmen and women practice every day. And so for me, that was something very different that I've done on this course around mindfulness. But the other areas that we looked at were also around social innovation. And we talked about personal innovation. We talked a lot about corporate innovation. But of course, having the corporate innovation is useless if you also don't look at the impacts of social innovation. So again, one of the projects that we had to work on, and we had an Italian professor, Case, right? Ezio Mancini, very, very Italian. But he is really a master and a guru of social innovation, and made us think a great deal about the impact on societal change, the impacts on what we do in our life. And I think, again, one of the interesting things for me is this course is, in essence, really about innovation, leadership, but it also it reflects across a very wide area in terms of mindfulness, social innovation, I think perhaps a new kind of corporate thinking and mentality, which is perhaps called for today. So that was very interesting. And you can see there, the wisdom path. So Lantau Peak and taking that wisdom path. And this is the project I'm working on right now. Case alluded to the course director, an Israeli professor by the name of Professor Yesha Shivan. That guy was sending me emails at 1 o'clock this morning. And he was still giving me a hard time on my topic, because this is the capstone project. At the end of this month, I'm going to be presenting on the project. How can the corporate world support the Hong Kong startup ecosystem? Now, I'm passionate about this ecosystem, and I've seen it grow and develop in the last 3 years. You know, if I look back 3 years ago, there were literally 2 or 3 co-working spaces, no accelerators. If we look at today's model, there are over 50 different co-working spaces. There are over 10 different accelerators here in Hong Kong. So I'm really passionate about that, but Yesha is still not convinced. And I've been changing my, kind of direction. And this has gone through several iterations already. But at 1 o'clock, actually at 1:12 this morning, I have to say that he came back with the words, "This sounds like an interesting discussion." That guy has been kicking my ass for the last several weeks. So I was very, very pleased for him to send me that email at 1:12 this morning. And so what we've agreed is, how can the corporate world not support but benefit from the Hong Kong startup ecosystem? And actually, that is a good point. I think corporates can benefit a hell of a lot from this change of thinking and mentality. So that's what I'm doing. I am interviewing lots of different people to get their views. So this guy, Steve Monahan, head of innovation and head of Edge at AIA Group. And his comment, "I strongly believe that the corporate world can use startups to help innovate and create new types of business." I also have been talking to this guy, Dane Fisher, the managing director of Infinity. Infinity have their global headquarters here in Hong Kong, the Japanese luxury car division of Nissan. And again, his comment, "I think it's so important that we help to nurture some of the brightest young entrepreneurs, collaborate to solve a number of issues, and start thinking about the future smart cities." Because of Hong Kong, we have to turn ourselves into this new smart city. And then I also sat down with Christina Ventura. I'm not too sure if anybody knows Christina, but Christina is now how about that for a cool name? Chief Catalyst Officer. I thought that was a very, very cool name. She was also responsible for opening the Apple stores here in Asia. She was the lady that pulled together the team to open the first Apple store in IFC, because the technology guys realized that they weren't retail guys. They had to think out of the box. They brought Christina in to do an amazing job. And the Apple store in IFC is the #1 store in the Apple network globally. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the region of generating $700 million in one store. Highest revenue per square foot. So we must think and work smarter in the future, and I believe that we must give a helping hand to the next generation of entrepreneurs. We have a clear responsibility to create a better place to live and work. So again, one of the things that I'm doing in this course is I'm also getting a lot of access to, I would say, fascinating business leaders, fascinating entrepreneurs, and also with the government as well. And perhaps the solution is also in creating a better dialogue. And one of the things I mentioned to Case as well is perhaps Case's office is on the top floor. And he has a big office, ladies and gentlemen. And if you've been naughty, you have to go and see him. So sometimes I sit outside his office because I haven't finished my assignments. But actually, there's also a big space on that top floor. And I know that Case was also thinking about how can we create this innovation think tank. And, you know, again, what if we can create a better dialogue between both the corporates and the startups at this newly created innovation think tank on the top floor of the Jockey Club Innovation Tower? We don't have all the answers, but what if we can bring great minds together with a mix of leading corporates, leading entrepreneurs, and Hong Kong founders to discuss how we can make our city a better place to live, love, and learn? And for me, that's perhaps what I've learned. You know, it's not just about the work, not just about the corporates, but how can we make this city a better place? And doing the Executive Masters in Innovation Leadership has helped me to kind of unclutter my mind, and it's helped me to think about perhaps some of these important things. So my final comment to all of you, oh, and by the way, there's some great professors. I have to say, I love this guy, Professor Greg Lee. And one of the great things about this course is there's professors from Italy, literally from all over the world that come into the PolyU. And Case and his team have done an amazing job in pulling together some of the world's brightest minds to think about these issues. So my final comments, ladies and gentlemen, is, are you ready to take the path of wisdom? I kind of feel like Yoda. But really, again, I just wanted to share that with you because I do believe very passionately that we need to change, that innovation, and if we don't change, we are going to be disrupted. Make no bones about it. We are absolutely going to be disrupted. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all very much for being very attentive. Case and I think we're nearly at the end of our time, but I'm sure both Case and I would be happy to take questions, Cynthia. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions or any comments. Andrew Jones? Listen. I have got to tell you a very funny story because as I was going up the mountain, there's a great professor. His name's Brian. He's an American dude, right? Brian. He's got a ponytail, bit suspect, but he's like walking next to me and he said, "Okay, Anson, just remember 4 deep breaths, 4 in, 4 out." I'm like, "Brian, I can't even do 2 breaths." But I did make it up to the top of the peak, and we had a very mindful afternoon, Andrew. You should try it. You really should try it. Not sure if anybody has any other comments or views or opinions. Cynthia? Save yours for later. Anyway, what I was going to say, Case and I are going to be around here for the next few minutes anyway, so if you'd like to come and have a chat. Case?
Yeah. Maybe good to, we will start again class in September. And and there's still a possibility for few people to sign up, but you should not wait too long, because you will be interviewed and the like. So we also want to have there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning. We want to really have an interesting class. So like I said, there's still a chance. You have to contact me or Wanze, who is here, or Georgina, who is in the back, who also take care of the, let's say, all of the things to make sure that not so much from the content point of view, but that all the logistics are well in place to give you the right experience in the program. So there's still a chance, but you have to be fast to get into the program. Either yourself or people that you think who would be really suitable for that type of program. Yep.
Okay, so on that note, so on behalf of the AmCham and the Entrepreneur SME Committee, it's good to hear from Anson that the corporates are very supportive of us, as well as Hong Kong is very supportive of us. And I would like to have a small token of appreciation from AmCham. So Bailey.